Okay guys, so today we're going to talk about the market system and the circular flow. This is sponsored by AEDU, formerly the East Brunswick Academy. So first, let's look at the economic system. The economic system is a particular set of institutional arrangements and a coordinating mechanism to respond to the economizing problem. So the economic system determines what goods are produced, how are they produced, who gets them, how to accommodate to the change, and how to promote technological progress. So the systems differ as to who owns the factors of production and the methods used to motivate, coordinate, and direct economic activity. So these are the two economic systems, and they're polar extremes: the market economy and the command economy. So let's look at the command economy. So the command system, the command economy, it's the government that owns most property resources and economic decision making, and that occurs through the central economic plan. The central planning board appointed by the government makes nearly all the major decisions concerning the use of resources, the composition and distribution of output, and the organization of production. So that's one side of the spectrum. Now let's look at the other side of the spectrum, the market system. The market system is characterized by the private ownership of resources and the use of markets and prices to coordinate and direct economic activity. So in this economic system, participants act in their own self-interest. And as we talked in the last presentation, self-interest is trying to better your own position in society. So individuals and businesses seek to achieve their economic goals through their own decisions regarding work, consumption, or production. And that is self-interest. Market systems allow for the private ownership of capital. It communicates through prices and coordinates economic activity through marketplaces where buyers and sellers come together. And I'll talk more about that at the end of the presentation. So we're going to talk mainly about the market system. The market system is in a lot of economies, especially the United States. So let's look at the characteristics of the market system. Private property. So private property, private individuals and firms most own of the property resources. It enables individuals and businesses to obtain, use, and dispose of property resources as they see fit. So property rights encourage investment, innovation, exchange, maintenance of property, and the economic growth. However, it's also important to note that property rights also extend to intellectual property through patents, copyrights, and trademarks. And because of all this, property rights facilitate exchange. So now, the next characteristic is the freedom of enterprise and choice. So market systems require that various economic units make certain choices, which are expressed and implemented in the economy's markets. So now there are two important terms that you should know: the freedom of enterprise and the freedom of choice. So the freedom of enterprise ensures that entrepreneurs and private businesses are free to obtain and use economic resources to produce their choice of goods and services and to sell them in their chosen market. Freedom of choice enables owners to employ or dispose of their property and money as they see fit. So now it's important to keep in mind that choices are free only within broad legal limitations, essentially the laws that govern the country and this type of decision making. So now let's look at the next characteristic: self-interest. So self-interest is a motivating force of the various economic units as they express their free choices. So this means that each economic unit tries to achieve its own particular goal, which usually requires delivering something of value to others. So the next characteristic is competition, which is a very important factor. So the market system depends on competition among economic units. And it's the basis of competition, which is free choice, which is exercised in pursuit of a monetary return. So competition requires two things: two or more buyers and two or more sellers. And the entities need to be acting independently in a particular product or resource market. And the product and resource market I will go over at the end of the presentation. So there also needs to be freedom of sellers and buyers to enter or leave markets on the foundation of their economic interests. So the reason why competition among buyers and sellers is so important is that it diffuses economic power within the business and households that make up the economy. This limits the potential abuse of power. Essentially, it's saying that producers cannot charge a higher price than the competitive price or they'll lose sales. So let's look at it this way. Producer A and producer B. So producer A can put a higher price than the competitive price because otherwise producer B, which will have a price that's lower than the competitive price, will end up making a lot more profits since it's much cheaper than the competitive price. And therefore consumers will buy that instead of producers A products. That will mean that producer A will be losing profits and they'll either go out of business or they'll need to reduce their price to below the competitive price. The next concept is the markets and prices. So the millions of decisions made by households and businesses are highly coordinated with one another by markets and prices, which are the key components of the market system. So unlike the command system, which is on the other side of the spectrum, in which a lot of it is done by the central planning board, the market system is essentially a little bit more free-flowing. While it still has this coordination, it's not done by the government. It's done by the markets and prices, essentially people competing with each other. A market system conveys the decisions made by buyers and sellers of products and resources. And as I've said before, this is the organizing and coordinating mechanism. So the next concept is technology and capital goods. So in a market system, competition, freedom of choice, self-interest, and personal reward provide the opportunity and motivation for technological advance. So monetary rewards for new products or production techniques acquired directly to the innovator. So the reason why technological advance is so important is as I said in the first presentation, if you look at the production possibilities curve, technological advance is the reason why that the PPRC line can expand outward, the production possibilities curve. That's it can only expand if there is an innovation in technology. So market systems encourage the extensive use and rapid development of complex capital goods, tools, machinery, large-scale factories, and facilities for storage, communications, transportation, and marketing. So capital goods are extremely important because it helps the economy in the long run. So while consumer goods help in the short run and satisfies the consumers, capital goods ensure that the economy can sustain its long-term growth. It ensures that the economy will have a rapid economic growth. And that's why you want to make sure that your capital goods are the best they can be. So advanced technology and capital goods are important because the most directed methods of production are often the least efficient. And this is also tagging on to what I said before. The only way to avoid inefficiency is to rely on capital goods. And capital goods diminishes its inefficiency. The better the capital goods, the more diminished the inefficiency is. And more efficient production means that there will be a more abundant output. So now the next characteristic is specialization. The use of resources of an individual, firm, region, or nation to produce one or a few goods or services rather than the entire range of goods and services. That's specialization. So these goods and services are then exchanged for a full range of desired products. Society has learned that self-efficiency breeds inefficiency. So what this saying is that trade is extremely important in order to accomplish the best possible combination of goods. So let's look at this at the international trade perspective. Country A and country B. So country A has a certain combination, WX, and country Y has a certain combination of production with goods, Y and Z. Now suppose that country A specializes in the product of W, while country B specializes in the product of Z. Now keep in mind that when I say W, X, Y, and Z, W and Y are the same thing, X and Z are the same thing, it's just the output. So with specialization, they can trade with each other so that They can trade with each other so that they can reach the optimal output, something that they could not accomplish uh, if they did not trade with each other. And that's where specialization comes into play. So human specialization, called a division of labor, contributes to a society's output in several ways. Specialization makes use of the differences in ability. Specialization fosters learning by doing. And specialization, most importantly, saves time. Specialization also increases the total output society derives from limited resources. That's essentially being a lot more focused and driven in knowing what to make and what you cannot make. Specialization also works on a regional and international basis. So the example I gave before is on the international basis, but even look at the United States, which is such a huge area. You can specialize geographically. Yeah! Wait! So now let's look at the use of money. So money is a medium of exchange. It makes trade easier. So specialization requires barter, the swapping of goods. So barter poses serious problems because it requires a coincidence of wants between the buyers and sellers. So barter is essentially one person's wanting someone from another, and they trade goods. So the problem is that what if they don't have the same wants? Suppose one person wants cows, right? But that person who has cows may not want something from that other person. Maybe they want a notebook, and that person who wants the cows may not necessarily have that notebook. And when the wants do not match, they use money, the medium exchange. Money is a convenient social invention to facilitate exchanges of goods and services. So now let's look at the active but limited government. Alright, so now let's look at the active but limited government. So market systems have an active but limited government. It promotes a high degree of efficiency in the use of its resources, but it has inherent shortcomings called market failures. And that will be explained further on as we go through macroeconomics. So now let's look at the 5 fundamental questions. So these are the key features of the market system that help explain how market economies are used. So the 5 questions are: what goods and services will be produced? How will the goods and services be produced? Who will get the goods and services? How will the system accommodate change? And how will the system promote progress? So now we're going to walk through the 5 questions step by step. So what goods and services will be produced? So goods and services produced at a continuing profit will be produced. Goods and services produced at a continuing loss will not be produced. Continuing economic profit, that means the total revenue will be greater than the total cost, and industry results in expanded production and the movement of resources toward that industry. But a continuing economic loss, that means that the total cost is greater than the total revenue in industry, leads to reduced production and exit of resources from that industry. In a market system, the consumers are in command. So that means that consumer sovereignty, which means that consumers are in command, is crucial in determining the types and quantities of goods that are produced. Consumers spend their income on the goods that they are most willing to buy. And through these dollar votes, they register their wants in the market, and they decide what is made and what isn't. So how will goods and services be produced? So the overall goal of any economy is to minimize the cost per unit of output. So that's finding the right balance of what to make with this demand. What is the supply when there's X amount of consumer demand? So competition eliminates high-cost producers, and the profitability for firms require that they produce their output at minimum cost per unit. So the most efficient production techniques depend on the available technology and the prices of the needed resources. So who will get the output? Any product will be distributed to consumers on the basis of their ability and willingness to pay its existing market price. So the amount of income depends on the quantities of the property and human resources they supply and the prices those resources command in the resource market. So now let's look at how this system accommodates change. So market systems are dynamic. There are a lot of things that influence it: consumer preferences, technologies, and the supply of resources. And these factors are constantly changing, which makes it so dynamic. The changes of consumer taste direct the expansion of some industries and the contraction of others. And you can see that a lot. You can see that in the smartphone industry. You can sometimes see that in the automobile industry. You can see that but you can see that there's also a decline in some other industries as well. Like a far-fetched example is the typewriter industry. You don't need a typewriter if you already have computers. So how will the system promote progress? So society desires economic growth, which means greater output and higher standards of living, which means that there needs to be a greater income per person. Market systems provide a strong incentive for technological advance and enables better products and processes to supplant inferior ones. So, for example, firms that were in financial ruins one year can become extremely successful the next year with the right product. And its competing rivals would suffer as a result of this. And this can happen vice versa. One firm that was extremely successful last year could be in financial ruin this year because that product might be out of fashion. So technological advance includes new and improved methods of reduced production or distribution costs. So market system promotes a rapid spread of technological advance of the industry. And the result of this is creative destruction. This is an important term. The creation of new products and production methods that completely destroy the market positions of firms that rely on existing products and older ways of doing business. I think this is so. It's really important to know this because that's essentially saying that firms need to stay on their toes and constantly innovate if they want to survive in the market system. So the invisible hand. This is proposed by Adam Smith. The invisible hand is an imaginary force that promotes a public or social interest. So there are three important virtues of the market system: efficiency, incentives, and freedom. Good. All right. So now let's look at the demise of the command systems. So there are two major problems with the command system. There was a coordination problem and an incentive problem. So let's examine the coordination problem. Central planners had to coordinate millions of individual decisions that would ordinarily be made by consumers in the market system. The output of one industry served as the output of another industry. This meant that the failure of that one industry could affect the entire economy, which, of course, is a huge problem. But that problem, well, isn't really accounted in the market system. Although one industry might fail, that is a bad thing. But the rest of the industries aren't affected to the point where they'll all fail. And that's a major strength of the market system. So as economies expand, coordination becomes even harder. So let's take a look at the USSR. That was a command economy. And that economy was huge. Not only did the Central Planning Board have to manage the USSR country, it also had to monitor the satellites as well. And as a result of that, there were a lot of decisions that it had to make. A lack of a reliable success indicator coordinates the coordination problem. So in the market system, we have indicators like PPI, the production. We have the PPI, we have the CPI, the producer production index, the consumer production index, or stuff like that, like the ECI as well, which help indicate whether or not the economy is successful on a relative basis. In addition, the planners had to assign specific quantities, which created distortions. So, unlike in the market system, where basically firms and businesses could create as much as they wanted, they just had to take the consequences if they created too much, too little. With the government, creating too little would mean that people are not getting this product, while creating too much would mean that those goods might go bad or it might become useless. But so now let's look at the second problem, the incentive problem. Since companies were rewarded for finishing the job assigned regardless of quality, there's no incentive to make good products. What this means is that companies could create shoddy products but still receive the payment simply because there was nobody else to make that product, one, and two, their job was to create quantity, not quality. and a lack of entrepreneurship in the command economies resulted in a lack of innovation. This meant that the products would not be good. And because of this, the command systems ultimately failed in the end. So now let's look at the circular flow model. It's a dynamic market economy which creates continuous repetitive flows of goods and services, resources, and money. And this is illustrated in the circular flow model. I mentioned at least 2 to 3 times in this presentation that I'm going to go over the resource and product market. And this is where I'll talk about it. So in the resource market, this is the upper half of the circular flow diagram. The resource market is a plane where resources or the services of resource supplies are bought and sold. And this is basically from households to firms. Households sell the resources and the businesses buy them. So the funds that businesses pay for resources are costs to businesses, but are flows of wage, rent, interest, and profit income to the households. Productive resources flow from households to businesses, and money flows from businesses to households. So the product market, which is the lower end, is a place where goods and services produced by businesses are bought and sold. Businesses combine to produce and sell goods and services. Households use a limited income they receive from selling the resources to buy goods and services. So this is what you see in the marketplace. This is an illustration of what occurs in the market system and what we do every single day. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to teaching the next lesson.